Renault, it appears, is planning to drive in new models into India by 2025. It already has, from what I know, it has Kwid, Triber, Kriger. 3 more models likely to come up from Renault.
So I think, yeah, let's just continue the story that we started with Maruti and let's sort of, drive it into Renault's garages as well. It's pretty much the same category that everybody is after. It is that 46% market share that India already commands in the SUV space. SUVs commanding a 46% share of the Indian automobile market.
Right.
Now remember, Renault again is a very interesting case in point. Why? Because Renault was among the first companies out there to launch an electric vehicle. And that unit got sold eventually to Mahindra and Mahindra and sort of translated into the fleet segment. But remember, when you say Renault and you go on the streets and you ask a regular common Indian, a bit of an auto enthusiast Indian, if I may add, about Renault, I think pretty much the first name that pops out is going to be the Renault Duster. And the Renault Duster pretty much defined the SUV affordability category for India. Remember when it launched, I forget which year, I think it must have been 2011, 2012.
Absolutely.
It was launched at a price point of 7,50,000 rupees. You could own a big SUV, it wasn't a sub 4 meter SUV, for 7,50,000 rupees. Of course, those were the days that even the Honda City was available at 7,50,000 rupees, but and prices have overall increased. But Renault was the first mover to introduce India to SUVs. India did not have SUVs up until then. And it obviously sold like hot cakes. It sold like hot Renault Dusters. And the gang of Dusters and the sort of, the whole pomp that went around that cult car was very impressive. Now, Renault wants to, it obviously exited for whatever reasons prior to the SUV market really maturing. But from what I understand, I think it is going to be the SUV market that Renault wants to go after and is not going to shy away from that. Right now, the 3 cars that are being sold by the Renault company in India are Kwid, Kriger, and Triber. And these, of course, are not premium cars. These are not expensive cars. These are very affordable cars. But I think Renault wants to go after the SUV market, and it is promising to release, I think, another 3 models in the coming financial year by FY25. And thereafter, by 2030, pretty much like Maruti, it has its own roadmap laid out as well. So it seems like it is going to be the SUV category. It is going to be the EV category, and I think it is also going to be the EV SUV category. So SUVs running on electric vehicle technology rather than ICE engines, and that seems to be the road ahead for pretty much everybody. Automaker.
Just this morning, in fact, Mahindra is looking at a bigger share of the pie as far as EVs is concerned. So EVs, of course, is going to be a major focal point for all the SUV car makers, and not just the sub 10 lakh rupee category, but more so the over 10 lakh rupee, between 10 to 20 lakh rupee and over 20 lakh rupee categories.
Now, my only fear, Shweta, you're right. I think, that seems to definitely be the focus for all automakers. But that focus comes from where? I think it stems from the fact that we saw some very good numbers in EV offtake last year. 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers pretty much, ruled the roost. 2-wheelers had 1 million plus. 4-wheelers also increased their penetration from 1% to about 4% of the market, and India is a large market. So 4% on absolute terms is a big number to go by.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, with this confusion over the FAME subsidy, and you of course are an expert on that subject, but I think with this confusion over the subsidy regime, with this confusion on whether consumers will get those subsidies, get a discounted price on their EVs or not, and thereafter the whole the whole focus on e-highways, e-mobility highways, and this talk on battery swapping facilities, which nobody yet has any clue about. I mean, you go to an Indian Oil petrol pump, you see there is a battery swapping station. Nobody lined up to actually exchange that battery. And secondly, batteries don't come with the same specifications that a scooter battery will go into a car battery, will go into a 3-wheeler battery, will go into, let's say, a bus or a truck's battery compartment. So the point is, there is still a lot of confusion on how EVs are going to get popularized by Government of India. Right. And when I talk about EVs, again, I'm talking about the whole chain, right from 2-wheelers all the way to public transport. And until that clarity comes in, I think those who want to take EV as their primary driving vehicle will look at it with some suspicion. Those who can afford to buy a second or a third city running car as an EV, that you have your charging point at home or in your office parking dedicated, and you come and you plug it in and it charges, and you don't have to worry about long distances and highway driving, I think adoption is going to take place there. But overall, it's about time that the government very, very clearly comes out and discloses its real long-term vision for promoting electric vehicles. And unless that happens, I think all the investments that are being made by large companies, small two-wheeler manufacturers, and anybody across the board, even when you talk about localization with respect to batteries being made in India, etc., I think all those rules of engagement for EV will have to be written down very, very clearly with a guarantee that they are not going to change. There won't be any U-turn on those rules next year or 3 years later or 5 years later.
And Amit, you've been speaking to a lot of people in Niti Aayog who are directly dealing with e-mobility, who are dealing with FAME subsidy, who are dealing with literally electric vehicles and the future of electric mobility in India. My understanding from when I spoke to you and I heard your interviews is that, what people are wanting in power, which is Niti Aayog, the operational body here, trying to brainstorm what the future of EV is going to be, they are of the view that you need to make e-mobility possible by the way of infrastructure first. But what the car makers, the two-wheeler makers are asking is, you make it easy for people to buy it first, which is you give an upfront subsidy. When the adoption happens, infrastructure will follow through. So there is, of course, a lack of clarity there and a lack of maybe a cohesive approach. Both these players are not in tandem with each other on what the future is going to be.
Yeah, they have tried one approach, which we'll call in economic terms demand pull, where they basically subsidized the vehicle itself. And that worked to some extent, did not work to some extent, probably because the other side, the infrastructure was not there. So now they are shifting policy to focus on the infrastructure. So that is, like you said, there has been basically, they're trying the 52 cards. So they have tried one, now they're going to the other, but they are doing it very aggressively. So we will see a lot of infrastructure, whether it is e-mobility, highways, electric highways, all that, coming up in the times to come, and sooner than we expect. But yeah, there was one kind of approach up to some time ago, which has changed now, and now they are focusing on basically spreading the subsidy to the other side. Whether it is batteries or whether it is infrastructure in what goes into electric mobility. And especially right now, e-mobility, as their surveys suggest and what I could get from the people who are owning or buying electric vehicles are using them within city. That is not an option that many people are taking to basically go from, say, from here to Jaipur. But Delhi to Jaipur, Delhi to Agra, the e-highways are ready right now, or will be ready, will be the first ones to get ready. So let's see how that plays out.
Right.
Regarding Renault, Karthik has been very elaborate. There's one little point probably that also should be looked at, as the French are coming. The other car, which is basically the most reputed French car, which came the last in India, reputed in the sense it wears a badge of honor. I mean, people who own a Citroen boast a Citroen.
Okay.
They have priced their lowest car, which is, they have not come into SUVs. They priced the lowest car at 6 lakhs, and their EV EC3 is at 11.5 lakhs. Renault being another French one, probably they're looking at competition from home turf also, and being aggressive in going into an area where Citroen is not going.
Okay.
Karthik will have something to say on that.
No, I think the Citroen, I feel, it was launched last year, and the Citroen has not yet, to my mind, bought into the trust factor when it comes to Indian consumers. I don't know if numbers are going to support me, but I believe Citroen has not had the kind of sales that other new product launches from more trusted brands in India thus far have seen. And Renault has that advantage over Citroen, I believe, because Renault has been around for longer, has sold successful products, has sold brands which people are still familiar with, whether it is the Duster or even the small sized Kwid. So these are cars that you see, these are logos that you see more often on the roads, and hence your likelihood to sort of jump ship or jump car in this case and latch onto that brand versus a Citroen, or even since you're talking about French brands, even Peugeot.
Peugeot,
If that were to come back into
Back
India,
into
Peugeot was in India in the 1990s. I think it had one model, if I'm not mistaken, which sold a few numbers but did not really reach that scale. Of course, I'm talking about 1990s, and there
were
wasn't
in
as much scale
collaboration,
to talk about. But Citroen or Peugeot, for that matter, as compared to, let's say, a Renault, I think Renault for India wins hands down.
But that's also because of the trust factor.
Trust factor,
and the
primarily.
And the time they spent in the market.
and the serviceability of their car. I
Totally,
think
totally.
that is one thought that goes behind everybody's mind. If you're going to buy a car which may be a high-end luxury car, is it going to be easily
Or
serviceable?
even a small car for that matter. You know,
Right.
even a guy buying a small car.
You want it to be
you
serviceable.
want it to be a Maruti Alto.
Absolutely.
You don't want it to be maybe a Citroen C3 or
You know,
whatever
it's
that brand
interesting
is.
you mentioned that, because as Indians,
same
I think,
price.
you know, and this is out there on surveys, that we care a little less about the safety of the car as opposed to the serviceability of
No,
the
but
car.
thankfully, Shweta, and you know, and this is an area where I would really like to pay my compliments to our Honorable Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari. I think he has been in the driver's seat when it comes to Indian automakers taking safety seriously.
Right.
Of course, the cost of that safety does get passed on to the end consumer, but the fact that rare seat belts become mandatory in cars of all sizes across all trims, airbags becoming mandatory, and I think even ABS, the anti-skid braking system, is also likely to become mandatory. So I think overall we are moving into a more mature market where we are building highways which transport people at much higher speeds. We are building cars which come with certain safety features without which those cars will not be allowed to sell in India. And overall, the consumer per se is also a little more aware of these safety features, and those who can afford it are going in for cars which are higher
Safer.
on safety features
Absolutely.
rather than those which are a little cheaper but compromise on safety. So I think the
Right.
market is definitely maturing in the right
Well,
direction.
that's good news, of course. Their market is maturing as far as you know, four-wheelers, two-wheelers is concerned. So overall, industry is maturing. Automobile industry, they're reporting better numbers. But with respect to Renault and Maruti, particularly Renault getting 3 more models into India by 2025, and Maruti is now at 23% share in the market segment of 10 lakh to 20 lakh rupees category.